Hi, my name is Bob Cook. Welcome to Lift Where You Stand. So, I started this channel because I wanted to be able to share my thoughts and feelings about the gospel with other people and hopefully finding people that resonate with it. So, I want to start off with a little bit of my conversion story. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the restored gospel of Jesus Christ. And I want to let you know how I got here. So, here's how it happened. When I was younger, my parents were members of the Catholic Church. I became a baptized member. I became an altar boy. I went to Catholic school when I was younger. So all those things helped develop a thought or feeling, a love for God, I guess, if you would. But while I was going to school, I ended up getting really bad grades in, of all things, religion. And the reason why I got bad grades in religion is because I didn't agree with the nuns who were there. So when I was a young man, I'd read the scriptures, and I could read them just like anybody else could. And I was maybe 8 to 10 years old. And in there, I hear Jesus say things like, "Not my will, but thy will be done. I'm only doing the things that my Father in heaven has shown me," and other stuff like that. And I'd ask them, "Who do you think he's talking to?" And they said, "It's metaphorical. It doesn't actually mean anything literal." And I thought, as a young man, thinking very literally, I don't believe that. I think that he actually does mean what he says. One of the things I would bring up to them was when Jesus was resurrected, or before he was resurrected, he appeared to Mary Magdalene out of the tomb. And she saw him, not recognize him at first, but then after a time, she recognized him. And he said, "Mary, touch me not, for I've not yet ascended my Father and to your Father, to my God and to your God." And I thought at any time he could have spoken in plain, direct language, he chose that to say. He wasn't trying to talk in code. He wasn't trying to hide anything. He was openly expressing what he was thinking and feeling. So that being said, I don't understand the contradiction to think that God and Jesus Christ were separate. But I try and share that with the nuns, and they'd get very mad at me and try and shut me down. And my dad was good enough to support me because I was actually genuinely interested in what they're talking about. But because of their opposition, as a young man, I just had a tendency to shut down and keep it to myself. I eventually left the Catholic school and ended up joining a public school in high school. And I would share a thought or feeling about Jesus Christ with other Christians that I knew. And it became very quickly apparent that they did not like what I had to say. And they would try and shut me down as well, often getting hostile or angry at me. So that means that I would eventually just stop talking about it. I'd still think about it, but I wouldn't talk about it. So I would ponder a lot of things relating to the gospel, things that Jesus had said, things that I'd read. And I knew the stories in the gospel, but I didn't really read the Bible at this point. I just knew the stories from a childhood perspective. And so after that, all that happened, I lived a life that was not in accordance with the gospel, a life that was more worldly, interested in those kind of things. And at some point in my life, in my late 20s, early 30s, I had this distinct feeling that I should go back to church. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why I had it, but I felt like I need to do this. And so I started attending different churches. And they were great. They were like going to a movie or something like that, where you see like some action-packed something, and you get this great feeling while you're there. But then you leave and you feel like, oh, that was great. That was all in the theater. But now that I'm here in real life, that's not the same thing. It's different. And so I had this feeling every time I go to these different churches. They were nice to go to, fun to go to. But after that, it seemed like there was no connection. So then I came across the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm a physical therapist by trade, and I would work with people. I had a young female sister, missionary, come into where I was working at, and we'd be talking a little bit about what she did and why she did that kind of stuff. And this is my first introduction officially to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, was through this missionary who's coming to me for an ankle problem, of all things. And I'm sure I knew other people who were members of the church before that, but I never made the connection in my head because maybe I didn't really care or just didn't really pay attention to it. And these people who were good members didn't share their beliefs, maybe. I don't know. Whatever it is, somehow there was no connection. While talking to this sister missionary, I'd ask her questions like, "How much do they pay you to go on a mission?" She starts laughing and saying, "They don't pay me. I have to pay to go on a mission." I'm like, "Okay. How many days a week do you work?" She said, 6 days a week. "Okay. Like, what are the hours you work?" She goes, "We get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and then we go until 10 o'clock at night. We do our study. We do all this kind of stuff. We go out and we talk to people for 8 hours a day. We do other things. We do service projects, all these kind of things." And she was very excited about it and very willing to share. And then I said, "What do you do on your day off?" She said, "Oh, that's when we go grocery shopping and we do our laundry, and we have time, we'll get together with other missionaries and we'll hang out." And I thought, That's what you do on your free day off, and you're paying to be here. Okay, so that's impressive. How old are you? She was 20 years old. And I thought to myself, what is a 20-year-old doing out on a mission, paying to be here to talk to people like me? So it just intrigued me enough to be able to make me ask the question about what they believe and why they believe it. So she started talking a little bit about it, but she said, really, this would be better if we actually had a time to actually discuss this and not here in the clinic. So I agreed that we should go do that. So we did. But in my mind, I thought, I only have one question for you. My question is this: is God and Jesus, or are God and Jesus Christ the same being? Because if they said yes, they were, I was going to think to myself that this is not in concordance with the Bible, so therefore, whatever you have to say after that, I'm not really that interested in. The short story is, they said right out of the gate that no, Jesus Christ and God are two separate entities, but they have the same will, the same desires, and the same purposes. They both want the same thing. They work together to achieve that thing. And that is the exaltation and salvation of all men. So I thought to myself, that's incredible. I want to know more about that. So we started on this path. It took several months for me to be able to follow this path down until I got to the point where I was ready to actually join the church, get baptized, and become a member. Now, when you become a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I don't take it as a small thing. I take it as something that's very sacred and very important. And I thought about this very long and hard. I prayed about it, and I felt like this is what I should be doing. So I did that. And once I did it, because of my background and being a Catholic and all that kind of stuff, I really leaned on the Bible a lot in my understanding of what the restored gospel was. There's a lot of cultural things in any church that can throw somebody off, because there's things about doctrine that are actually the things of salvation and the things that people just do out of convenience because that's a culture. And it was hard for me to discern between the two things. So over time, I was trying to use the Bible to discern the two things. I had the Book of Mormon. I'd read the Book of Mormon several times. I enjoyed the Book of Mormon, and it was very illuminating to a lot of things, but I used it through the Bible lens. In doing that, it really hindered my ability to grow and learn what God actually wanted for me. So in about 2020, someone challenged me and said, so Joseph Smith, when the Book of Mormon was translated, he said, the man can get closer to God by abiding by the precepts in the Book of Mormon than by any other book. And so I've heard that for 20 years, but never really did register to me. So then that somebody actually challenged me and said, hey, if you believe that book is the most correct book, why aren't you using that as your lens to look at the restored gospel? And I thought, yeah, why am I not doing that? And so I've invested 20 years of my life in this. And I believed wholeheartedly that this was right. But there's something missing. And so I decided to do exactly that. I invested myself in the Book of Mormon and started reading the Bible through the Book of Mormon lens. And once I did, oh my gosh, it's like the world changed. Just everything changed. It was like it just exploded on me. And I'll give you a quick example. Now, we know in the Old Testament that King Hezekiah destroyed a bunch of temples and consolidated all the temple worship into one temple in Jerusalem. At the same time, he was going around killing a bunch of people who were considered prophets, or they didn't call them prophets, but they were calling them something else, but killing these holy men. And I believe they were to be prophets. And this happened about 400 to 600 years before Christ came. And isn't it a coincidence that when Christ showed up, he said, you guys have ruined all of this, okay? Oh, let me go back a minute, because I almost forgot to tell you, the Neshutan, which is basically the pole with a serpent on it, that Moses put up in the desert when the people were getting bitten by snakes. God commanded him to build this thing and to be able to put it up and show people, and if people looked at it, they would be healed. That symbol of the Neshutan was essentially the symbol of Jesus Christ. So King Hezekiah, while he was destroying these other temples, the Holy of Holies is the most central part, the most holy part of the temple. And in the center of the temple was the Neshutan, which is a representation of Jesus Christ. He said people were worshiping it, so he took that out and he destroyed it. He essentially symbolically took Jesus Christ out of the temple. Now, this is a big deal because Jesus Christ shows up 400 to 600 years later and say, you vipers and hypocrites, you guys took me out of the temple and now I'm here before you. Right? Very serious, very, very real. Now, this is an understanding. If you go back and look at the Book of Mormon, it can't be a coincidence that Lehi and his family, Lehi was considered a prophet, and he was considered a prophet that believed in not only the law of Moses, but also in the law of revelation, the ability to commune with God and become closer to God. The Jews said, no, no, no. The law of Moses is all you need. You don't need anything else. If you go look at the New Testament, that's exactly what Jesus was condemning them for. All you believe is the law of Moses, and you don't believe anything else, Revelation, all that kind of stuff. You don't believe in any of it. And that's your problem. You need both of these things together. And the Jews said, no, only one. It's interesting because in the Book of Mormon, Lemmy and Lemuel applaud the Jews in Jerusalem at the time, which, by the way, Lehi and Nephi left Jerusalem about 600 years before Christ comes. But at the same time, King Hezekiah was doing all this kind of stuff. Now, that being the case, Lemmy and Lemuel said that the Jews in Jerusalem were good. And why are they good? Because they believe in the law of Moses. But Nephi and Lehi said, hold on, the law of Moses is good, but you need revelation as well, relationship with God. They were like, no. So there's a big split between these two groups. And they eventually splintered off into two groups, the Lemmy and the Nephi. Okay, that's essentially the story of the Book of Mormon. It goes more into it than that, but that's the story. Now, later on, there's other people come in and they talk about how the law of Moses is the law. They basically say the same thing that Lemmy and Lemuel said, the same thing that the Jews said in Jerusalem after they got rid of Jesus Christ out of the temple and said, this is all you need. And basically, they've eliminated the need for a savior. What's that called? That's called the Antichrist. Anybody who tries to eliminate the need for a savior is considered an Antichrist, somebody who's opposed to Christ or the Savior himself. So this is all through the Book of Mormon lens, which I would never have seen if I hadn't tried the experiment. It is my hope that you will try the experiment, to read the Book of Mormon and to look at it first from a historical perspective, then from a spiritual perspective, and then use that as a lens to look at the Bible and other things in your life. Okay? It's an amazing text full of richness and full of history and full of cultural things that we even now don't understand. And we're just starting to begin to understand. All right? So give it a shot. Let me know how it goes. I'm looking forward to hearing about it.